You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I'm Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and man, just like any other time, we have another special guest. Today, we have someone who is going to explore the topic of mental health, and he is not just someone that is a great advocate for mental health, but he's also someone who is a fellow podcaster. Even though he's taking a break to promote his book and all the great things he's doing for the community, he is someone that we really want to learn about today. He's also an author as well and an artist. His name is Thomas Brown, and I'm excited to have him on our show today and say, first and foremost, man, thank you for your time. How you doing, man?
Shmaya, thank you for allowing me to be on your show and to talk with you and share my story with your audience. I really, really appreciate it.
You have a powerful story, a story that I feel is going to inspire a lot of people and help a lot of people who might be in a dark spot in life. So first and foremost, before we talk about your books and everything that you do with your advocating for mental health, you have a story with your brother that started in 2001. If you can, for our audience, kind of set the tone for your story, what inspired you to be doing what you're doing today.
So I lost my brother, Mark Brown, to suicide in 2001. He was 6 years older than me. It was just the two of us with my parents. So it was a massive, massive loss. I will say that I was dealing with a lot of my own mental health issues before that, and the death of my brother was kind of like the last drop in the bucket. My biggest thing that I had to deal with for my own mental health was that I was extremely codependent. And with my codependency, I avoided or ignored my own life passion and purpose. And I've always found myself in toxic relationships, both in fellowship with my buddies, the guys that I used to like run around with, and also in intimate relationships with women. And it took me a long time, rather than like delving into myself. I've always been open with my emotions. I think as an artist and as a creative person, I'm an extremely emotional person. I've always been known as being the person that shares his feelings and never had a problem crying. But I couldn't really for some reason, this is the early 2000s, I couldn't come out and just say I was depressed or that I was, dealing with some type of mental health issues. And, I thought that I could just rely on my friends, to support. And in doing so, I didn't really go out and seek out any type of professional help for myself. And, what emotional bandwidth and strength that I might have had after my brother died, I tried to put that into my parents and help them as much as I could. But not having the emotional skill set, the emotional intelligence, the tools one needs to navigate grief and trauma, for myself, there was no way I could be helpful to my parents. Over the years, I recognized some of my codependent tendencies, and I was able to lift myself up in a more professional way. I knew that I needed to get away from the community that I was a part of, that I had built with my friends. And so as a non-Christian, I joined a group of progressive Christians in 2006 and walked across the country from Phoenix to Washington, D.C. And I was actually the minister who came up with the idea, knowing that I was into film and video production, asked me if I would be the production assistant for a filmmaker that was following the group. So I said yes. So in that time period, I broke away from the toxic relationship with men that I had in my life. This was 2006, 5 years after my brother's death, but I was still engaged in toxic relationships with women, with my sexual partners. And And so when I did this walk across the country, it really opened me up. It was like theology on the road and film school on the road. And there was my family's from Kansas, and the first time I'd ever been east of Wichita. So it was really opened my eyes and my mind to more of the world. And when I came back, I got into film school. And I was doing really good in film school. I was making a lot of projects. I was winning awards in school for the projects that I was making, but there was still something missing. I still was in a toxic relationship with a woman that was not healthy for me. I couldn't get the claws out of me. I was hooked, and it was a part of my codependency, and I was getting more and more depressed despite doing good, in the field of art and creativity, photography, film production. I was getting very, very depressed in my life. So finally in 2008, I found myself in therapy. And for the first 2 months, I'd go twice a week. And my therapist, Kim, completely tore me asunder spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And it was about 2 months. It wasn't until the third month that we even got to my brother. She spent a lot of time just helping me figure out who I was, my family dynamics, the relationships that I've had, the dominant relationships I've had. And it wasn't until 3 months into it that we even got to my brother's suicide. And one of the most profound things that I learned from Kim that I take into my advocacy with helping people who've lost loved ones to suicide or helping somebody that's navigating mental health issues is the very important, power of self-awareness. Self-awareness is, I would say, overall awareness. And to me, I've classified 3 pillars of awareness. I'm not saying that is the rule and that is the law, because part of the journey of self-awareness is that you write your own playbook. But what I have come to, the pillars that I've created is that to cultivate true awareness, one must first work on self. Understand who you are outside of the meat suit that you landed in for whatever reason. Who am I outside of my country? Who am I outside of my gender? Who am I outside of the race? Who am I outside of my family tradition? Who am I outside of the political affiliations that I was grown into? Who am I outside of the religion that I was grown into? Why do I respond to any type of situation? Why do I believe the things that I do? To me, self-awareness is the only game in town. If you do not know who you are, if you do not know why you respond or react in any given situation, you will have an entire world filled with institutions and people who don't have your interests in mind, telling you who you should be, what you should do, how you should act, and what you should strive to be in life. And if that goes against your true nature, even if you don't know what that nature is, it is a mixture for disaster. It is a toxic chemistry. It is napalm. It is an explosion waiting to happen. So the first part of awareness is self-awareness, understanding who you are. Secondly, you're not alone in this world. There are people that you have to interact with on a daily basis. There's people at your work. There's people in your family, all types of things. So spatial awareness is understanding where you are in life, where you are when you occupy any type of space. And third, hopefully, if you've done a very good job of cultivating self-awareness, spatial awareness, you gain some social awareness and you have some empathy and compassion. Through self-awareness, you can gain some empathy and compassion for yourself in the plight that you are in and the struggles that you deem. And hopefully that can expand into social awareness where you have great empathy and compassion for people who do not have the same experience that you do. You must understand that whatever ego and meat suit you occupy, based on the way that you were raised, you have an extremely powerful filter over your consciousness that allows you to take in the world in a particular way. And it takes the work of self-awareness, the self-awareness practice, to break through that and understand who's driving the vehicle of you. And hopefully, and unfortunately, we don't have any type of institutions that not inspire, but encourage people to be more self-aware. I really think that we should have a class that helps us at a very early age start to learn self-awareness. And because it's not like there's no summit, there's no finish line to self-awareness. You're something that you constantly cultivate. Something that you're constantly working on, because you will change over time with each new experience. But there's still nothing there to help us. Usually one has to either go through a trauma and seek out some type of like spiritual or psychological help before they start a journey of self-awareness, or they need a humanities credit for their degree. And so they think that, a mythology class or a philosophy class would be an easy semester. And hopefully if they absorb it correctly, they have a good teacher, their minds will be slightly broken in the best possible way at the end of that semester. So with the help of Kim in 2008, I really just learned a lot about myself, and I learned the tools to continue to learn about myself. Because I could be great if I could be great at alienating people, and if I alienated everybody in my life, I still have myself to deal with. I still have myself that I'm stuck with. So it's good to get to know who you are. So after a few years of working with Kim, I finally had the courage to break away from the toxic relationship. In 2010, I met my buddy Zach, who was the first person I had ever met outside of my own family's experience that lost someone to suicide, and he lost his brother. And Zach and we bonded pretty quickly. It was kind of wild because there were some tendencies that he had that reminded me of my brother, but that's like an entire conversation of its own. So within 6 months, I was feeling good. I was in a different relationship. I was feeling good. I was still thriving in school, but there's something missing. There's something eating away at me. It's something that I knew that I needed to do. I needed to shake things up in my world. And I had a conversation with Zach June of 2010, just 6 months after we had started hanging out. And I told him about my walk across the country and how it affected me on a positive level. And after talking a little bit more, he came up with the idea to do this bike ride, to ride our bikes across the country. And it was just something we kind of it spoke to me, but we hadn't made any definitive decisions. And it wasn't until February 2011 that we decided, yes, this is going to be a thing we're going to do. And it took us 13 months to prepare. It took us 13 months to raise money. It took us 13 months to get the word out, to create a website, to get some type of community backing. We found a local mental health facility and crisis center that backed us by putting us underneath their 501c3 so that we could get donations. We had to do some physical training, but living in Phoenix, Arizona, and having almost full-time jobs, it's hard to do a lot of strength and cycling training. And we don't have a lot of mountains to, in the valley to deal with. And the first state we started in was California, and California's got some hills, man, especially in San Francisco. So, it took us a lot. We decided that we wanted to get the bang for the buck for our experience. So instead of doing a straight line, which would have been from sea to sea, it would have been 3,000 miles plus some change. We opted to double that. So instead of doing a straight line, we did a giant W throughout the entire country. And it took us 7 months to ride our bike across the country, stopping in over 100 cities, having events, meeting with people that had lost loved ones to suicide. And for me, at that point, I felt like I had already come to terms with the loss of my brother. I accepted the fact that he was gone and that he wasn't coming back. And so I just wanted to learn I knew my experience. I felt it was important to learn from other people. What was their experience with law enforcement? Because when you call the police when somebody you love has done the act of suicide, police are always going to see it as a homicide until their investigation concludes that it isn't. So that's always could, at least back in that time period, it's a sign of contention. You're suffering this trauma, and you're kind of being looked at as a suspect at first. So learning about people's experience with law enforcement, learning about people's experience with the community, because suicide can be seen as a taboo subject. Were they treated with grace from their community, or were they ostracized? What tools did people learn in navigating their grief? How long was it before they found a therapist? How long was it before they found the right therapist? Because therapy is kind of like dating. You gotta find the one that fits. And maybe there's therapists out there that have never worked with somebody who lost a loved one to suicide, so they don't know all the triggers, which is important. It's a very specific trauma. How long did it take people before they found a support group? And was it for loss in general, or was it for suicide loss specifically, which again is a very specific trauma, and it kind of helps to have the people around you that have had the similar experience when you're navigating your grief and trying to heal. So we just learned a lot of things from other people, and we just shared our message, which was the importance of self-awareness and our reverence for art and creativity. We really feel that art is something that brings people together, even though we may not think of it. We think of music brings people together. Film and interest in film or books can bring people together, but that is art. That's creation. There's so many forms of art out there. And if people don't look at themselves as creative people, we invited them to through thorough introspection, look at their life as a piece of art, in which each decision that they make is kind of like them, the brush stroke across the canvas, and them creating their own life and their own existence, hopefully for the betterment. So that's pretty much the entire journey in a nutshell. That's the speed dating version of my journey. When I came back from the bike ride, I wanted to originally do a documentary because I'm very much film minded, but we didn't raise enough money to hire somebody to come along with us. And I knew that it would be too hard for me to try to do the bike ride, coordinate with other organizations and towns down the road, do the events, and film everything. That was just too much, plus riding my bike. So even though I had a camera with me and I continued to shoot footage of our scenery, a lot of interviews with activists and therapists, I knew that I was going to write a book. I wasn't able to get as much footage as I wanted, but I got a ton of interviews, and those interviews and the footage of the scenery kind of kept the journey with me, along with an extensive diary that I kept, keeping notes day by day, and even a couple entries, more than one entry in a day. So between my diary and the footage, I was able to write a book, 2012, A Bicycle Odyssey. You can get it through my website, risephoenix.org, or it's the link is to the Amazon. But it's 2012, A Bicycle Odyssey. In it, I kind of promote Joseph Campbell's philosophy of the hero's journey, the monomyth of the hero's journey, and I show how that 17 step of the hero's journey applied to my life, and I invite people to look at their lives as the great narrative of their story, and how to be present with it as they are thrust into circumstances that they don't usually want to find themselves in, and how to navigate that. So I hope that that people, I always encourage people to start their journey of self-awareness and self-discovery and be open to the infinite possibilities that are at their fingertips, and knowing that, like, depression and suicidal ideation, sadness, that all of these are just like little bumps in the road, and that the only way out is through. And if you find yourself in the dark forest, keep walking and you'll get to the light.
Once again, listen, Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Thomas Brown. And, man, you did it right there. We have the full, like you said, the speed dating version of the story. So we have about 6 minutes left. So real quick, what I gained from all this is, number one, you made progress throughout time. It wasn't like you said earlier, you swung the bat and hit a home run and life forever changed, and the flowers and sunshine was just coming every single day. And I think that's important, because a lot of times we can listen to these interviews or just people's life successes, and we just assume from the outside that, oh yeah, he just woke up one day and it just got better. Like, no, it is definitely bumps. I like to say series of bumps. Sometimes years later it'll be a bigger bump, and then you just you adjust to it, and I love what you said. You keep walking in the dark, and eventually you find the light. I think that's powerful, because when you understand the potential that you really have in life, sometimes it takes those bumps just for you to understand the potential that is really there. When life is easy, of course, it kind of gets boring, because it's just redundant, and it's like, okay, everything's perfect. And then when life hits you, that's when the ultimate test starts, and it's like, oh shoot, I guess I really had to think about this. And I love what you said with your experience with the therapist, and how she spent time to get to know you first, and not just jump the gun on why you were there in the first place. And I think that is telling, because like you said, if therapists are like dating, yeah, you need someone that's actually going to tell you what you need to hear, and not someone that's just going to tell you what you want to hear. So if you have a message for those out there who are listening to this episode, just words of encouragement. Maybe they know someone that has committed suicide, or they know someone who has experienced, a family or friend who has experienced suicide. Outside of therapy, were there any additional nonprofit organizations or resources out there that helps you, that can probably help someone listening?
American Association of Suicidology is a good one. Another one out there is American Foundation for Suicide Awareness. But like, just look and see what's going on locally. Even if you're not dealing with in crisis, 988 is the national hotline. You can get resources about what's happening in your community locally through that. But just you have to keep at it. It's so cliche, but like, you just have to keep at it. Find the thing that brings you joy and brings you peace, and cultivate that and work on that, and know that, even if you just do a little bit of work on it each day, even if we were only traveling an inch a day, you're still traveling an inch. Look at the big picture. We live in a society that covets convenience, and a journey of awareness, a journey of self-discovery and overcoming and healing from trauma and grief isn't convenient. And just understand that, it takes time, but you have the time, so keep moving.
I love that. And I think that is well said, because if people took the time to just enjoy time, then life, how they had the old commercials where the parents pushing the kid and the kid comes back in the swing, a grown person is like, yeah, it's a little harder to push this person now. Like, I kind of look at that at life difficulties. It's like, when you start to realize, hey, while I have time left on this earth, I can actually do something about this, versus I'm just going to let it simmer and see where it goes, because it might just be more difficult later. Like, if you don't tackle it now, Oh, man, it's going to be a lot more harder later. So as you have been able to see yourself, not just understand your life journey, purpose, and passion and vision for what you want to do with your life, what's one thing that you learned since the therapy, since the friendships that you've been able to cultivate? What have you learned about yourself that you appreciate today that you were kind of, in the dark looking back in the day?
I'm going to be okay. That I'm going to be okay. And that, like, whenever a bad situation happens, I still feel about it. I allow myself to feel. You have to allow yourself to feel. Otherwise, that will fester and it can turn into something else. So allow yourself to feel, even if it's scary and painful. Allow yourself to feel and express that, hopefully. And I encourage you to do it in a positive way. But after that, it's like, the first step of Joseph Campbell's monomyth is the call to adventure, or it's also a call to action. So when this thing has happened to you, because life happens all the time, allow yourself to feel it and then know that you've now been called by some force to go on this new adventure, no matter how terrifying or scary it is, because what you're doing by going through it and answering the call is that you're giving yourself an opportunity to level up, to get stronger, to learn about yourself, to learn even more about yourself, to learn about your place in your community and in this world and on this giant living starship floating through the void. It's going to be scary, but it's an opportunity for you to become a better person, not only for your life, but for the people that you call friends and family around you, or even for strangers, being a better person with a stronger character for everybody that you encounter.
Once again, listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Thomas Brown. You can go to his website, risephoenix.org. And man, we're flat out of time, but I will say this. One, I'm glad that you have a sense of humor. Two, I'm glad that you have this positive outlook on life, because I can't agree more with what we discuss on the show, and that is basically keep pushing forward, keep pushing through. It doesn't matter what it looks like right now, because you said it great moments ago. Sometimes it's a calling, that challenge that arises in your life is not always super deep, man. Sometimes it's just simple. Are you going to quit, or are you going to push forward? And every day, like you said, if you just take 1 inch at a time, that's better than someone who hasn't moved in 30 years.
Word.
All right, man. We can probably go for another 3 hours. I got to get on another call. But before we let you go, I know I gave people the website, risephoenix.org, but is there any way people can connect with you online just for any updates for any events or books you have?
Yeah, through risephoenix.org, you can get to my social media. We're on Facebook. Rise Phoenix is on Facebook and Instagram under Rise Philosophy. But you can get there through the website. You can get to the book. You can get to the podcasts that I mess around with. And then you can also get to the social media. Follow for more engagement.
Well, like always, Thomas, I want to say thank you for your time, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.